Yeah, so we're talking about recruiting diversity and how to find a good pipeline of diverse candidates. So we briefly discussed blinded resumes certainly being a good piece of something to talk about either with your recruiting partners or internally. And then, yeah, Pearson, can you talk a little bit again about what you're saying regarding
Yeah,
meeting talent where they are, something like that you said?
yeah. I mean, I just feel like, and again, this is Dan's words. I just hear him say a lot in the office. Yeah, I think it's a lot about meeting them where they are, and you can't expect to just post a job on an Indeed or a LinkedIn anymore and expect that to pull through the diverse talent
Oh,
that
yeah.
is a unicorn. That's just not the way it is. Whether it be going around and again, selfish plug, using a recruiter who's networked in the space well, or going to different groups and things that diverse candidates are. I think that that's the way we have to look at it. And most importantly, continuing to cultivate that. I think that even if it's something where you're not necessarily looking for a job immediately, if you can look out for these groups, if you can get connected with some of these folks and continue to network and maintain that relationship, if you can be known as a company that's looking for and
Yeah.
seeking out diverse talent, that, that word of mouth is going to travel so much further than anything on a LinkedIn job post could do.
For sure. Just in general, I think in our industry right now, like posting a job isn't going to always get you exactly who you're looking for. There's a little bit of exhaustion with that. But on top of that, if you're certainly if you're searching for a particular type of background, you're going to need to
Yeah.
use a recruiter.
Selfish
Smith
plug,
Hanley,
selfish plug.
Smith Hanley Associates. Um, yeah, okay. So the other thing, I guess another standardized thing. So another company that we work with, small pharmaceutical market research company that does qual and quant research, like a custom research house, they have standardized interview questions, which I think is very interesting because you're like, yeah, of course we have, everyone has standardized interview questions, but no, not really. I mean, you do, but you always kind of move away from it if you're having a good conversation or all of those types of things. So what it's doing is making sure that all the candidates get the same questions so that you can evaluate them based on their answers specifically and not always just about quote unquote culture fit. Because I think that's
Vibes.
vibe checks. I mean, vibe checks are important, of course, but the idea is like not everybody does this, right? You can certainly be unbiased when you're having a phone interview. I mean, we have to do that. But the idea is that you're going to like somebody that you identify with more a lot of the time. I feel like unknowingly. It's this unconscious thing that happens to you when you're talking to somebody. It's like,
Right.
oh, you're from the same area. You grew up in the same area of the city. Oh, you like are from the same type of background. You went to the same university. You both have kids the same age. Like whatever it is, just labeled a bunch of things that happened to me. But the idea is like, oh, okay, you kind of identify with that individual, so you rank them a little bit higher when that shouldn't happen.
Right.
It's to promote a diverse candidate pool, is to maybe pick somebody that doesn't just isn't like a clone of you and bringing them into the organization. Does that
For
make
sure.
sense? Have you heard of this too, the standardized interview questions?
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, the whole point, it's kind of like blinded resumes. It's everyone's answering the same questions. Their answer
Yeah,
is what we're judging it on. It's not any other characteristics, right? It's how they is their background appropriate? Great. How do they answer these questions? Is it what we want them to say? Is it aligned
yeah,
with our core values? That type of thing. And just leaving it at that, right? Not letting that bias creep in. It's certainly not a common thing, I don't think. Like we don't see it
yeah.
a lot, but it's certainly becoming more and more
And on
important.
the front end too, we're talking like
Yeah,
of course you want to do a vibe culture check towards the end of
sure.
the interview process or even in the middle of the interview process just to make sure you're not wasting anybody's time. But like this is like you're screening 20 people for this and you want to bring in five. Like let's make
Right.
sure that the resumes are blinded and there's some standardized interview questions to make sure that you're bringing them on.
Right. Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
we're more open-minded in terms of like where we're recruiting from. I think Pearson alluded to that as well. It's not just the three standard places that we post jobs, but maybe we go to a career fair. Maybe we're acquainted with an organization that supports like underrepresented communities in finding work. Those types of things as well. We're not specifically only always looking for one particular marketing degree
Right.
from the three universities that you have on your list,
Did
right?
they go to Michigan State or not? That I need to know. Yeah.
Great MMR program, right? But yeah, it depends on the job, right? Of course, it's a it can be a highly critical role, and you need those types of things. But you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm.
Right.
Be
Yeah.
open-minded.
All that stuff is on the front end, and unfortunately, I know the HR, the recruiters, usually got to take the brunt of that. But definitely, what you said around the vibe check part of it, when you get into speaking with the hiring manager, the president, the CEO, those guys are still, are you going to fit in with this team already? Even when it comes to the
Yeah,
course of like bringing in somebody who is going to bring some discourse, is this discourse going to be productive for us, or are we just going to be arguing the whole time? I think that, like, a lot
sure.
of
That's a
those
good point.
things, I'm a believer that diversity of thought can create a lot of good, but also, sometimes if you got a good thing going, you don't need to mess it up too.
For sure. Like we have clients that are on both sides of the spectrum, right? So we'll have a client, one particularly research consultancy in Chicago, smaller, 200 people-ish. And they're like, okay, well, we're very liberal minded, and we need to make sure that we are connecting with people that have the same values in that way. Like, okay, like we can ask some certain questions to make sure that we're talking to people so that they both sides of the spectrum feel comfortable in that regard without asking specific questions about like how do you feel about this political issue and that, who did you vote for,
Right.
like all these types of things, right? I mean, so there are ways to kind of in a sensitive manner prepare people for culture fit,
Of course.
that's not just based on their personality, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some like diverse outlets that people should be promoting and um, in terms of like promoting jobs and things like that? Any come to mind?
I mean, I know that like the ones that come to mind are like insights in color, and then like HUE. I know that we've been pushed those by some of our clients, and I feel like we've done research and seen them in a couple places. But I guess the other place that I really feel as if you should always put is the Idea Council and some of those things through the Insights Association.
Mm,
What they're doing with the IDEA program is literally looking for more diverse market research talent outside of it. And I feel as if they are a great network for especially people who,
that's good.
we're talking about people from different backgrounds who don't really even know a lot about market research, but are interested in trying to be more involved in that corporate side of it. You know, I think that's a great spot for sure. And I would highlight that one first and foremost.
That is a great one because it's what's cool about it too is that if you're a company, you can also be involved in the Ideator program. So you can say, hey, I work at Smith Hanley Associates and I'm interested in um, getting diverse talent. So
Right.
I'd like to be a mentor within that program so that they can eventually join my organization, right, in an apprenticeship format. Um, so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of our clients have done it, and I mean, I actually got to. I remember I spoke to one of the girls who who actually landed a job after it because
Oh, nice.
once you do the apprenticeship, you get a chance to go on full time as well if you do a good job. And I mean, she landed a job afterwards, and again, had no idea what market research was until this program, and now she's in love
Right.
with it. So, again, it's about educating diverse groups as well. And I know it's always easier on the more junior level, but, as much as you can do for
That's where it
even people in the
starts,
space,
you know?
yeah,
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
I mean, I think that's part of the major problem of creating a more diverse pool in this industry is it's kind of a systemic issue that is beginning to be more addressed, right? Through organizations like Pearson just mentioned. One I recently discovered, I'm not going to act like I'm an expert on them, but the Advertising Research Foundation has their own
ARF.
similar ARF. uh, They have their WIDE program, which is an organization that does a lot of the same things, right? They create internships and scholarships and mentor programs for um, diverse and maybe underserved talent in the industry, and promoting that for organizations to kind of bring them in for those internships and give them an opportunity to join the career in the industry in that sense. And I think that there needs to be more of that, to be honest. If you want to create a more diverse talent base,
Yeah,
it kind of starts at getting people more involved in it in an academic setting. as well, and getting
100%.
them
You know, it's
into it.
expensive, an MMR program, a master's in market research program. I mean, it doesn't have to be, right? But it can be very expensive.
Right.
Training and certification programs. University of Georgia offers some more affordable options when it comes to certification programs and things like that. Um,
For sure.
but I do think that there are other options besides advanced degrees, and I feel like companies are becoming a little bit more open-minded to that. Um, I mean, the MMR program is incredible. Like, I don't want to discount it by any means. It certainly positions you. We start to view it as like maybe 1 to 2 years of experience for candidates that are coming out of those programs, right? Which certainly gives a leg up when you're
Right.
interviewing and stuff like that. But we are seeing evolution in this. I think that non-specific master's programs are certainly taken into consideration, and things like the ideator program and ARF, what you're talking about, the mentorship program, the apprenticeship programs are certainly a step in the right direction and just very exciting. Wire too, Women in Research, they have a mentorship program for young women in this space, men too, sorry. I know that Pearson always calls me out when I say that. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of mentorship opportunities there too to connect with them, with women in the space, men too.
Yeah.
And yeah, so lastly, I think we probably touched on a lot of these points, but certainly discussing a little bit more about how companies can retain the diverse talent once they obtain it. Um, any specific examples that come to mind that we should be relaying to companies?
I mean, I know I feel like we've talked about it a lot already, but
Yeah,
number one thing is you got to look in the mirror as a company. You know, whether that be the C-suite sitting down or you like doing like what my candidate was doing, the employee surveys. You got to know how people feel about your company and the employees most importantly. So if you can become educated on how what your shortcomings are, what your positives are, and how to,
yeah,
negate the negatives and make the positives shine even brighter, that's the number one thing that you can do to retain diverse talent.
that was great.
I'm not
You
going
always
to add
have something
anything.
snappy to
That was
say. I feel
perfect.
like that was good. I mean, what are some things like we talked about the top-down approach, just as a little synopsis, right? As to, the leadership needs to be on board, be vocal about it. Obviously, the larger companies, I feel like they have PR teams and stuff. They're like, this is important. You need to pay attention to this, right? This is what people need for reputation management. But in reality, it's only going to help your business grow. So
Yeah.
the idea of having diverse leadership, it coming from the top down is certainly really important. Um, Creating consistent awareness, I think, too, in
And
that regard.
accountability. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think like we talked about here, it's not only saying the right things, but it's listening too, right? And when you have these employee surveys, you have all these metrics you're trying to adhere to, you're aligning yourself in the right path, right? And to do all these initiatives and these things, you have to you have to listen to the people that are there, right? And understand what makes them feel valued, what makes them feel included, and have
hmm
equity in this organization, right? Like those things matter, and that's where you should start all of your planning from. And I think we've talked about that already too.
Yeah. All right,
Don't be
perfect.
afraid to mess up. Don't be afraid to mess up. I think that that's another big thing here.
That's a good point,
Not everybody is
actually.
perfect. And again, this has only, taken the main stage, I feel like, in these last, 5 to 10 years. So nobody really has the secret sauce just yet, and you could still be the one to find it. So I think that that's the main thing. You got to be confident in your ability to mess up here and end up finding some positives.
When you say mess up, like, what do you mean? Because I'm thinking of like the cringiest thing possible, like an HR person,
Yeah.
like approaching a particular person of a race or culture and being like, "Hey, do you want to like represent us this month?" And everyone's like, "Oh,
I
you know what I
mean,
mean?" Like,
like there could be mess ups like that.
you see that, you know what I mean? You're like, "There's got to be a better way."
Like again, like there could be mess ups like that, and there could be less cringy ones, like having some. I know you see those HR guys on LinkedIn right now who are always dancing and singing and making up songs, and like you could have a training like that, and everybody responds horribly to it. But
Yeah.
I think of unfortunately, you got to mess up to learn some of those things. And here it's no different. There is no positive, or I guess completely positive way to navigate this situation right now. It's so tumultuous. And like whatever we can do to you gotta have the goal to mess up for
Yeah.
sure. Because I am thinking about how many times we have a candidate say, well, they asked me to do the specific holiday thing, or
Right.
they put us on the front of their websites when we know that there's not as diverse culture and things things
Right.
like that happen. But all you can do is be educated about it. I guess the one thing I'd implore our candidates to say is, big or small companies, please have a voice.
Yeah.
These things are only going to change by your input and being vocal. I think that if we're shy and cagey about the situation, we're not going to make any changes. So being vocal,
Yeah,
having a voice, being confident enough to mess up, this is HR and candidates or leadership, and change is going to happen slow, but it eventually will come and the right things will eventually happen from there.
for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, the best thing we can do to solve a systemic issue is just to continue to talk about it, create an awareness. Um, so yeah, I mean, in closing, unless Deanne, was there anything else you wanted to say? No?
No, I mean, I think you were saying it there. It's a taboo topic. People get uncomfortable when you start to talk about it. But like anything, the more you talk about it, the less difficult it is and the more impact happens. So just have conversations like this, right? I think that's all we're trying to do and get a little bit more people I don't know, aware of what you can do at an organization.
Exactly.
Educating.
Educated. And yeah, so in closing, we are certainly here to help. Talk to us about it. If you are in a need for a more diverse culture, the recruiters that you're working with know that so that they can make note. And they'll always be honest with you, hopefully. If it's us, we'll be honest with you about it. And then, of course, we're here to counsel our clients on that as well. If you're having problems in that area, but start to be prepared. I mean, if it hasn't already been happening, it should be happening now, where your talent acquisition or your external recruiting partners, whoever it is, need to be discussing it with you and need to have tangible items in place in order to make yourself, I guess, well branded,
Yeah.
right? Okay.